Right. Give me a second to share screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen on the OM issue on GitHub?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Let's go from the top down. Hopefully, we're able to address some issues and so closing out some of them as well before we go over to the registry side. I think let's get started with the number one, reporting that the package server API is not reachable when install this on the Elasticsearch. I mean, it's Elastic Kubernetes service on AWS, I'm pretty sure, with SDL. This is remind me if we have an issue of OM running on some sort of managed Kubernetes service. The last time was on Google Kubernetes service, I think. This time is for AWS. For some reason, the API service is not installed. There's not enough log to tell what's going on here.
There's quite a bit of failures, it looks like, to update the CSV, way more than I would expect. This is service mesh, right?
That's what
Or
it is.
Issue. So is there anything happening to the pod network that may make it hard, unable to connect to the package server?
Yeah, this is installed with STO, so it's probably has something to do with networking, but there's no obvious log to confirming that. This is, I'm pretty sure this is the OM log, right? OM operator log.
Did a deployment get created? Did we get that far?
It looks like it hits install succeeded, so I would assume.
Yeah, I'm
No,
wondering
it's
if it is
installing waiting, apparently.
API service is not installed.
Is there a what is it? Did they give any like resources on the cluster, like deployments, CSVs?
No, there's no log on that. It's just a CSV, a snapshot with CSV and some OM operator log, and that pretty much is, there's no other resources information that been provided here.
So to triage this further, we probably need to
So
ask for those things and also like maybe try to do it ourselves. Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying there definitely are package server pods running on the cluster. Right, if you scroll up.
Yeah,
There's
there
two,
is.
there are 4 of them, interestingly. It's probably because there's probably something wrong with those deployments.
kubectl apply.
Wanna,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think the next thing we need is status on all of those deployments.
Yeah, we can get the YAML block from this deployment to see if we can tell something go wrong.
You think it
Let me
makes,
try to read.
you
Someone
think
was saying something. Go ahead.
yeah, it's just
Alex?
Alex. I was just gonna ask if we think it makes sense to implement a process which says like just run this script and it will get us some resources to help us with debugging when you submit your issue. Something like must gather.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe
We
slightly
don't
slightly less intrusive, you know. Just gather. I like that.
just gather. Yes, we don't have upstream equivalent of must gather, but yeah, that's how something can certainly do. Essentially, just collecting resources, the OM specific resources, pretty much. That would be helpful. Yeah, I think we need the deployment information here. It's able to tell what went wrong. Yeah, I will comment on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at that GKE issue that is closed now.
Yeah,
And it seems like their problem was they needed to provide ingress from master to worker nodes. And they didn't. So I'm assuming that this is probably the same problem.
I'm pretty sure that issue is for catalog source.
No, this one is OLM. This is about OLM itself. And
Really?
Yeah, and the package server.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Actually, we can. This is linked to another issue.
It's the fix for it they have is specific to ingress in like Google Cloud, but I'm imagining AWS has a similar management tool. I've never used it, but I'm guessing that's the issue, is that the worker nodes can't communicate with the master nodes, so the API server doesn't play nice.
Yeah, that sounds like a possibility. I mean, the author linked to the issue, assuming this is the one that you just take a look at. Let's see if you can see. So he or she probably read through this. So I'm not sure.
Right, it's in the context of Google Cloud, right? Their fix is go do the thing with Google Cloud. But the problem is SEO configuration, so.
Interesting. So I'm not sure if that person was able to do something similar to the EKS. I mean, anyway, just go ahead with the. Go ahead, Nick.
So they give us some of the logs. For OLM, it'd be nice if we could get, like Alex was saying, the whole must gather, like all these different resources. But one of the things that does strike me as a little interesting is that they're using, it looks like they're using Customize, right? They are. So they're using Customize to install OLM on the cluster. And it's not clear to me whether Customize has solved the issue of ensuring that all of the CRDs and everything else are installed in the correct order, and the proper amount of time is weighted between when the CRDs are added to when OLM is started up and CRs are created, etc. It doesn't look like there's anything overtly wrong here in the logs that they gave us and the snippets, but I mean, that's also a thing that's a little strange. Like, they're not using a standard install. They made a customized script that does something. So we might want to try that on the side as like a quick way to see if that'll actually work.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, they do using customize for this, and they just provided the resources they plan to install, and look at the install CRD first, and then the OM resources later. Yeah. All right. Look like we have discussed this enough, and I recommended, and let's we'll see what they can provide, and let's move on to the next issue. The second one, the 2509 is end-to-end issue, and I'm pretty sure there's the bugs. I mean, their PR pull request to resolve this. So I'm just gonna not even look into this. Just move on to the next one. And this is an issue about I'm using an own version of OpenShift API, specifically OpenShift API and OpenShift Client Go. And I'm pretty sure there's a PR that we use to bump controller runtime. I think that should resolve the issue as well. And it's still pending due to some end-to-end failure, apparently.
Yeah, so this one has been, is Tim here? I don't see him right here, but do you want me to give you a quick update on this?
Sure.
I can tackle it unless my mic is going crazy.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So Alex and I, so we'll get this for free as part of the controller runtime bump. My understanding is because the 122 bump plus the API dependency being quite out of date, that the dependencies we're pulling in during tests use v1b81 CRDs. So that's a problem. The controller runtime bump, outside of, there's a couple end-to-end tests there, permafailing stacks. It's not immediately clear, but it'll likely get tackled in that PR. So it's probably fine to keep this around until that lands. I don't know if we need to go super in depth about the status of that PR, Alex.
Yes, sir.
All right, sound good. Yeah, so we have a PR pending for this. So it's just a matter of time before we get a PR merge and get the two vendor updated. Just remind me real quick. What we're using the OpenShift API and OpenShift Client Go for? Is that for the cluster operator status updating? Anyone knows? That's what I thought we're using this for.
It's for the cluster operator, and there's also a controller that exists upstream but not enabled that is specifically for downstream. It only gets enabled downstream. That does something else too with cluster version.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like, maybe we should get rid of this on upstream, given it's not really helpful.
Yeah,
in a way.
To do that, we would need to basically provide separate entry points and controllers downstream for running things. Unfortunately, the way our metrics are wired, it's not so simple to remove that side of things from the older controllers. So that might be more of a process, because there's like the sync counts being recorded from a Go channel in like the catalog operator and the OLM operator, and those are going directly into another controller that's feeding the downstream metrics. So if we pull that channel out, we'd have to surface that data somewhere else for it to be scraped, if that makes sense.
So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay, cool.
Kevin.
Yeah. So so Nick, I agree. I guess I'm thinking about the fact that I think that a lot of those metrics are actually just independently very useful, whether they're being used to fuel some OpenShift thing or not. I know we already did a bunch of work a few months ago around metric gathering. It might be interesting to see if we could coalesce on a way to get those metrics, like get all that like subscription sync count and all of those other things into something that's composable, so that we can expose it upstream in a way that like you could get it from a long running cluster there as well.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's a fairly large chunk of work.
Yep, I agree.
And we should write it up as like an issue or something.
Yep, 100%, totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, it's outside scope with this specific issue. That was just a thought that I want to confirm and asking. Thank you for the information, Nick and Kevin. So good. If we end up wanting to do so, certainly open the issue for that and we can discuss further. Anyway, let's move on to the next issue. Oh, this is the subscription config. So we're having a screenshot where we can add a bunch of information, which is basically, environment variable and so on, and they will be applied to the CSV, I think. And they want more subfield for some specific things as well, it seems. I know Alex is the one working on this in the past. Is that correct, Alex? The subscription config?
I've worked on that before, but I've not done any in this space.
There's more comments. I'm trying to read through some of the comments here real quick. All right, so it seemed like they want even more option
Ah.
to config stuff out more than just environment variable and argument on the subscription
I-
config.
Personally, I'm super skeptical of this one. Like, I don't know that we can this is the same conversation as like the pod presets thing, but even worse, right? Like, I don't see a way for us to just arbitrarily provide any arbitrary configuration for any operator for anything that they might have. Like, that just doesn't seem like something that subscription config can or OLM can or should even be attempting to do, right? Like, if there's some configuration knob that a user wants to do something with and the operator doesn't provide it, then I don't know that there's much we can do. Like, if this seems more like a feature request on the Jaeger operator to provide some knob to make changes to their operator.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think outside of going into fully trying the, the pod config that, what was that? The pod presets or something basically support. I don't think we should go down this path yet.
So Evan, I think last time, I don't know if he's on the call, but last time he brought up the point, like the slippery slope argument, where it's like we keep adding and adding more things until, you can raise the question on every like subscription or every catalog source or whatever, anything that like can result in a pod being created. You now have basically a pod spec that gets stamped out. So maybe instead of doing this, we get this question often enough that I'm wondering if it makes sense to just write a pod presets operator and release that as like a separate package that you can install with OLM, and then you can do what you will with that, and it'll make all the configurations you want.
I'm skeptical that that's a project that we I don't know. I'm skeptical that that's something that is going to be easy to maintain, I guess, is like that feels like outside. Either way, it feels a little outside the scope of OLM itself. Like, I'm not suggesting that like it's not something that someone could do. I guess it feels to me more like what we need to have is just some way to have some kind of release valve here, and anything beyond that is, I don't know, that feels like too much. It feels like something we probably can't maintain in the OLM project.
That's fair enough. I guess what I'm getting at is, rather than build a release valve that has some fuzzy bounds on where we should end, like stop with it, maybe we can go find a pod if we can find a pod presets operator or something, and we could just package that and say, here, if you want this, then use this, or if you need this maintained, then you can maintain it yourself. We're not going to add anything more to OLM. I think that effectively would get us off the hook, or at least have people stop asking us to support it first class.
One thing I should note, that even if they went and built this pod preset bit, wouldn't OLM overwrite it? Or does the deployment hash bit cover that and support it?
It depends. So I think we may need to change some logic to be a little bit more careful about what we really care about in the pod. And then, there is the potential that, with such an operator, you can cause conflicts and cause controllers to get all messed up. But, that's the risk of one of those things. That's why I think they decided against it as a feature, actually, in Cube.
All right, so there's a lot of discussion about this. So we should having I mean, there's only quite a bit of comment here. We probably want to summarize what we've been talking so far into the comment. Anyone want to do that? Maybe Kevin, can you comment on this feature request perhaps, and explaining
Yeah.
what we've been talking so far? Sound good?
Yeah, I can reply to it. I'll probably close it unless there's objections to that.
No, that's good to me. Just a comment on why I think that would be helpful, and that's all.
Yep, makes sense to me.
All right, thank you. All right. Oh, this goes on to the next issue. This is an upright problem.
Yeah, I tried to answer this one below. It's basically just, more of that confusion on how skip range, skips, replaces, all that stuff works. And so I provided a link to the recently updated documentation there.
Oh, wonderful. So you want to link the upstream doc here?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that seemed like what we're planning to do anyway, given the question. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I think he's just,
And-
it's just asking a question rather than, I don't think this is a real issue.
Sure, I think that's sufficient. I think he just probably want, so it's simply intention just skipping only the thing in the middle, intermediate version, because the way I work is will with the replacing chain will go one after another one until reaching the latest, just like he described on the first couple of sentence, and he want to skip the one in the middle.
Yeah, he just
so
got
that gives-
confused because the documentation he looked at, all the older examples discuss using it specifically to skip over broken things. But you can certainly use it to just skip over things you don't need anymore, right?
Yeah, you can just skip for that. And if he want to get to the latest version, that's why you can see skip range for that. Okay, so it seems your answer is sufficient. I don't see anything else we can possibly add. You even link the doc, so I think that's pretty much a done deal. All right. Thank you for doing that, Chris. All right then. Wonderful.
You can probably close that one, right? And have him reopen it if it's needs more questions answered.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's anything else to do here. He can reopen if he want to. Yeah, I'm sure what closing does that even work. All right, let me do it more explicitly. All right.
Yeah, so this is actually, this was one that was done from my team. Essentially, we found an edge case where there's the logic that checks to make sure that your new CRD is going to be compatible with any CRs you have out there. And we found an edge case, so you know what I'm talking about, right? The guardrails that prevent your
Yes.
Yeah.
Who made that actually, eh? So
What's that?
Sorry.
Vu, you were the one who wrote that, so this is actually a great one for you to handle, eh?
So the bottom line is that we had the crunchy data operator updated from the V1 beta 1 spec to the V1 spec. And when they did that, they added all of the versioning stuff. So the versioning of the actual API didn't change. They just added all the schema stuff. And so what they, a behavior that Kubernetes did was you could add nulls to any of your objects in the old V1 beta 1 CRD, and those nulls would be preserved. The newer versions of Kubernetes 1.19 and later convert those nulls to default values. Empty strings, empty array or zero length arrays, nulls, not nulls, zeros, falses, that kind of stuff. So there's an edge case where the nulls that you are validating against the API are still there, but they fail the validation. So in order to fix it, either the CRD owner needs to add nullable to every single field, which is how we worked around this, or OLM could do that conversion as if Kubernetes would have done it prior to doing the validation code. So if you look at the bottom, Daniel kind of agreed, saying, this could be an opportunity for us to, an OLM.
Yeah, I am very skeptical of OLM actually having any code that attempts to do any kind of migration here at all.
Well, it's not migration.
It is and it isn't. It's still OLM having an understanding of what the values are in all of the CRs and explicitly writing to them, which is something that OLM does not do today. I think that this seems much more likely to be something that could be solved by the auto migrator in Cube, which is something that I think we've been trying to put some more attention on recently. I'm very skeptical of OLM having any kind of explicit code that tries to manage any kind of migration in that sense. I think that we're probably not the best place to do it. And we're going to have the potential for doing some unexpected things, or we're going to also be expected to try to solve for lots of other things if we go in and try to solve this one problem.
Yeah, so so I think what Alex was implying earlier on, that I was the one adding this validation in the first place. So why I'm such a good candidate to answer this question. In the sense that I think, Chris, you only look into the code, so you can tell OM doesn't do anything extra on top of the fact that we're just using a bunch of upstream Kubernetes function to do the validation that you can retell. We don't do anything extra in terms of like, processing, fixing this or that, or add anything or do anything.
I get that, but the impression from the customer is, so the experience to the customer, if they're playing with raw Kubernetes, kube control and Kubernetes itself will do this migration for you automatically. And so it appears to customers like OLM is broken. And so I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to button that gap or make it, I mean, the error is kind of obvious, but it's, go ahead.
Does kubectl explicitly have code that does this automatically? Because this is not CRD validation, right? We're validating against the CRs on the cluster.
Correct.
Correct. So kube control will not let you add these nulls. They fixed that, so it automatically removes the nulls. However, if you use the APIs, you can definitely add nulls to these V1 beta 1 CRs. It'll preserve them. So there are cases where these nulls will stick around. And so anybody who's done that will not be able to use OLM to upgrade.
Well, whether they're using OLM or they're manually applying a CRD upgrade, they're going to get the same experience.
No, they won't. Kubernetes automatically migrates the CRs for you once you apply the CRD. It doesn't do that validation, and then it touches them and updates them all. So it handles those nulls on native kube.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm slightly confused. So they handle the null on the CR or on the CRD schema?
On the CR.
I'm trying to understand, when you say Cube does this, what part of Cube is doing that?
I'm not actually sure. I did a bunch of experimentation with different clients. And so I think there's a combination of kube control doing it. Because kube control, if I use an old version of kube control against a new cluster, the nulls also get preserved. If I use a new version of kube control, the nulls do not get preserved. So I'm thinking it's a combination. So if I have an V1 beta 1 CRD and I inject a bunch of nulls with an old kube control there, and then if I apply the new V1 CRD, the nulls get removed. So there are two paths where kube control is removing them, and is also a path that something on Kubernetes and the API server is removing them.
I'm just wondering if it's the API server here exclusively, and the actual problem is just that the validation libraries that we're using need to get updated to respect the fact that that isn't necessary.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't know. We probably have to go look at it and find out. But like I said, I do not think that OLM itself should be in the business of making any kind of client-side modification to CRs.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting it should. All I'm suggesting is it should preserve the same behavior, whether you're doing validation on a in-memory copy of the CR rather than modifying it.
Well, I'm the reason I say that is because OLM does do the CR validation that just force applying a CRD is not going to do on a cluster. If it happens that some of that validation that we're using isn't needed, then the validation that's running might need to get updated. But that's not the same as kubectl knows how to fix this problem and OLM is ignoring that, right? Like we have to treat, I think, OLM like a client no different than any other client that's written in from that perspective.
No, I get that. And I think it's semantics, right? So the behavior the customer sees should be the same, is my point.
Well, no, I'm not agree. I don't agree with that, because what I am saying is that the other validation that OLM does not happen when you just kubectl apply a CRD. And that stuff is help, like that is the value add that OLM is bringing. Right, you can totally bork your CRDs, or you can totally bork your CRs by force applying a CRD. kubectl will let you do that.
Yeah, but in this particular case, it's a compatible option, I guess. I guess I don't know if this is part of their spec or not. And I think maybe the due diligence here is just to make sure we're using the updated libraries.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If there is something about the validation itself that's wrong, like we probably need to go fix that, either fix that upstream, or there needs to be something that gets updated in the spec because we're following the spec and it happens that the spec doesn't need to have that fit, like that kind of that's I guess where the to me the problem most likely lies.
Yeah, I think the best way to do this, at least for now, is the fact that just try to repeat. I know Chris and Niha, hopefully I pronounced his name correctly, only go through this. So what I can do is like try to repeat this problem on my end and to see what exactly the situation here in terms of like how the QAPI server actually doing the whole node situation, and then to see if that's actually outside the scope of what the typical QApply would do. And if there's a function somewhere that actually handling this somehow that available on the API extension repo that we can use somehow, then we can give it a try and see how is that going to be invasive in terms of like messing with the CR, the existing CR or not, and we can figure out a solution for this if there is one. And I think we just need to understanding exactly what's happening here in terms of the QAPI server validation again the CR and go from there. Because like Kevin said it, if something that the API server only doing and there's certain function that we can use that to actually eliminate this, I would call inconsistency, then we should. But if it's involving more extensive, changing and updating and so on, that eventually gonna messing with the CR on the existing cluster, then we shouldn't do it. But let's try to see what it is before we decide what to do with it. So I can totally do that. And I will reach out to the author and you, Chris, and I can reproducing this and go from there. Sound good?
Yeah, that's fine. If somebody wants to add that to the comments.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we had a thread on upstream Slack for this, right? I remember this. So we can continue over there and go from there. That's good. So let me right. All right. All right. So good. All right. Let's jump over the registry real quick, given we always spend most of the time on the OM repo, see if anything comes up on the registry side, given we have about 15 minutes left. There's a feature request for OM div. Apparently, is Eric's here? I think Eric is here. This is somehow about OM div should allow skipping frequency in the package that related to some sort of like OC mirror. Can you had the most familiarity with this, so anything to say about this?
Yeah, you can assign this one to me. So right now you can skip adding dependencies to the diff globally, but not at a package level. And this is just a request to do that. And I think it's a totally reasonable request.
Okay. All right then. Okay, so Eric will take a look into this specific feature request. I said it to you, and that's how good. This is an issue that you opened it yourself, Eric.
Yeah, this is partially to clear up some confusion around config keys, and then also to add a feature for pinning specific versions of operators in diffs.
All right. Okay, then I think you already said this, so this is something you're planning to do. Wonderful. Actually, on now that we're talking about OM diff, we should probably continue with another issue with OM diff to see if we can continue the train of thought here.
Right. So I think this is a valid bug. I haven't investigated this though. So you can assign me as well.
All right, this seems to be some channel related. Interesting. Okay, cool. This is one picture is the index add comment about permission deny on the snapshot. I have seen this trap error before, but I'm not entirely sure actually what is the root cause. It seems like just some file inside the index or the bundle view was a different permission, and somehow during the OM index as process, the Docker just doesn't have the permission to essentially copy stuff or reading it, and this end up to be this problem, I think. I think he linked to another issue that we already closed. Either way, this is a tooling problem. The fact that we do using either Docker or Podman to do some of the you know functionality of the index add process. There's some comment here. Pretty much just saying the same problem. I'm not sure how we can actually fix this, because this is pretty much just a permission problem that if you don't ran that permission to the Docker daemon, then there's nothing we can do here. Is does the index add working with the containerd without using a daemon here at all? It's been so long, I don't remember exactly if this can work without using Docker or Podman at all.
You can't, so yeah, I mean, you can, so this problem is, you can't use OPM index add with containerd because it also builds the image. But what you can do is add the generate flag and
That's correct.
Set C to none. And then that'll build the new database, drop it in your local file system, and then you can Docker build from there.
Yeah. I'm just wondering when this permission problem happening, it's happening where exactly? Because we still need to read the bundle, right? To able to add that to the index, to the DBs.
Yeah, this is definitely happening as part of the Docker copy command, right? It's running Docker copy on each of the files in the file system.
So if this happening there, then we couldn't even generate the DB then. I mean, we couldn't add anything to the DB then because we don't have enough.
Yes, but if you don't use yeah, so yeah, if you don't use Docker for the, right, like if you could use Podman or you could use containerd for this part, like to generate the database, you don't need Docker.
Yeah, I mean, the intention of this is actually fix it on Docker apparently, but I think they are aware of the workaround solution here, either using Podman or renting the admin permission to the Docker daemon pretty much. And obviously the other option that you just mentioned, that instead of doing all of this, just generate a DB file, and then you can basically, Docker run the Docker file that's been generated along with it and using it instead. But the intention here is to fix the Docker side of things, which we're not gonna do it anyway, I don't think. It's just not something we're planning to do, because this is the tooling, the third-party tooling that's a part of the PM binary that we don't have control over. All right, I can comment on this and see if I can say that this is something that we're not planning to do. And they can using something else, either Docker department or the solution just said that just generate the DP file along with the Docker file and run that locally instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, then I will do so. Need to remind me. Okay. Why this is sound like a similar problem.
No, this is a little different. We've got customers that are using a whole bunch of image scanners.
Mhm.
And because there is no user inside the bundle images by default,
Mhm.
that every scanner complains about them. They think they're all running as root, and so they all, of course, customers hate that. So I think the idea would be to change the default template to use some bogus user, just some non-zero number, 1001 or something like that, even though it's never used for anything, but at least it satisfies the scanners as not running as user 0.
Interesting. Yeah. So I mean, this second statement is pretty much explaining what it is. This is bundle image built from scratch, so there's no need for user because it's a scratch
Alright.
image. It cannot be run anything pretty much.
So this is maybe a dumb question. Is anybody actually using OPM alpha bundle generate to build their Docker file? I think most people, if they're using any of the tools from the operator framework, are probably using the operator SDK, which doesn't,
Correct.
I don't believe even shares this code at all.
No.
Like we could do this. I don't know that it would help anyone.
But it's been so long since I looked into SDKs, I cannot remember if they the bundle generate on their side, which may use something here, but it should also generate Docker file, I'm pretty sure. But I'm not sure if the Docker file generated by the SDK is similar to what the generate command or the alpha command is. But either way, I think the Docker file for bundle pretty much still the same in the meaning that it's going to be a scratch Docker file for the Docker file for the scratch image without user either. I don't think on the SDK side it's gonna having some user information on the bundle.
Right, so you're saying
I
this
don't
is
think
not
so.
shared code. So this isn't shared code, and so we need to open up the same defect issue against the operator SDK if we wanted to fix there as well.
Yeah.
And even then, anybody who's not using the SDK would have to go and do this themselves.
Yeah, but it's not clear to people, right? So you're using these commands as the documentation for their best practice and how they should do it. Right. So even if they do that, they'll probably check that into their own build processes, hard coded or whatever. So it seems like it should be doing a best practice.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the alpha command should not be used here, as I mentioned before. The alpha command meaning it's just for testing reason, for local, development use. Pretty much, it's not supposed to be some production level thing. So the issue, this should be open on SDK, and I'm not entirely sure if SDK will changing something here to actually add the user annotation into the Docker file either. That's something you may end up to have to do that yourself if you want to get around this. Because, or maybe this is better to be a documentation thing that say that, we generated a Docker file, generic one without any user specification. And if you want to something else specify there, you need to do it yourself pretty much. Because I don't see how SDK can impose a user specification here without knowing what would be the intention, because there can possibly be a valid reason for whoever is building that bundle actually want to using a specific number for the user if they want to do so, not just random number that non-zero. So either way, probably should open the issue on SDK and see what the SDK team think about this. For OLM, we had no opinion on this, I don't think. So this author is from IBM. Chris, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or
Nick
this
he's from my team. Yep.
Yeah, so let him open this issue on the SDK and see if SDK team having some thought on this, and we can go from there. Because from the OLM perspective, I don't think we're having a strong opinion on this particular situation.
Yeah,
If you add-
I'll Slack him.
Yeah, all right then. So I will have a comment on this to make sure that just on what we just saying around here. And I think that should be it for that for this issue. All right. Anyway, we at time. We still 1 minute away, so I think this should be the end to closing out this meeting for today. Just would like to say thank you everyone for joining, and have a great day. And I will see you guys in the next meeting.
Thanks,
See you all
man.
later. Bye.
Appreciate it.